goes another 20-year-old.
Holy shit, I hate those guys.
Gotta hate 20-year-olds.
Fuck those guys.
Somebody help these 20-year-olds.
It's time to figure it out, Ricky.
Touch me.
Don't touch me. Don't fucking touch me. We're on Too Many Jams here. Hello. And welcome
Hello.
to Too Many Jams.
A show about all things 20-year-olds.
With help from friends, experts, and our own personal experiences, we hope to deliver you an auditory experience that helps expand your mind, your palate of being a 20-year-old and the issues involved.
Yeah. And today's guest is... Who do we have?
You thing is, this is the first time he's been on an episode with video. It's Mark Staniusz. Rob, how do you say his last name?
Staniusz.
That's pretty good. Well, what's the fake way you guys call it? What'd you call it last episode?
Staniusz.
Okay. When you said that, I was like a little bit hurt. I was really happy that someone like corrected and I realized it was a bit, but yeah.
Wait,
Staniusz.
say it.
Staniusz.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a fucking hard last name.
Oh, it is not
try to
easy.
spell it right now.
Oh, okay. STANDOUCHE.
Yeah.
D-O-U...
Staniusz.
Yeah.
It rhymes with Staniusz. I got there.
But
close.
welcome back. And for the people
Glad to be
watching on
back.
YouTube, you're now looking at them and, things have changed, I guess.
The hair.
The hair.
Yeah.
And you're a dad.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'd say both equally the same, right?
Yeah.
Cutting your hair off, having a child.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Tired. A little bit.
You look
a little
fine.
bit. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I was expecting more sunken bags under the eyes.
You
all
know
that
what
stuff.
though? There is that cliche that you don't get sleep, but I'm lucky to have such an amazing wife that kind of, and I work nights too, so a lot of the tough hours are kind of handled by her on the days that I'm off, and also it's really the first like month that is a waking hell. It really is. I cannot describe it. It's like it helped that I was off work those 2 weeks, but I'm sure we'll get more into it. But
You
like
had paternity leave.
yes, it is like
Fraternity.
Fraternity leave.
You don't know what day it is. You don't know what time it is. Like babies, when they first come out, have like two settings. It's like crying and sleeping. You know, you think you're like, I can't wait to bring them home and watch the Raptors with them on my lap and they'll be giggling. It's like, no, they're like crying or sleeping. And it was like that for the first month. And, you know, you don't get a lot of sleep, but we kind of, I don't want, as a new father, it's hard to say, but I think we're kind of past the worst of it.
We'll talk. Like I want to talk about all this, and that's part of the big reason why you're on. And thanks for making time in your schedule. We're more important than your son, and that's amazing.
Amelia's gonna take that and clip that out.
She's gonna clip it.
Yeah.
It's gonna go on the wall.
Yeah.
But let's just say we're gonna start the episode. We want to give the people listening a little preview. But you earned a beer.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
From our sponsor,
Yes.
True History.
I've been
Have you had
excited.
this yet?
No, I haven't. I've heard a lot about it though.
So it's blowing up, dude. All thanks to us. We learned last episode how influential we
You're very
are.
humble
Yeah.
podcast. You're
So
at your most
humble.
humble in the podcast.
So pour yourself a beer. So shout out to True History Farm in the Sky. You can find them in LCBOs. Follow them on Insta to see where they are. And also Wrist and Rye. You get yourself some nice male jewelry or female. We sell female sizes, but it's like a male brand. Unisex. A lot of sex going
For
on.
anyone and everyone.
And
bad for.
yeah, it's okay. We pour mics all the time, and you
You
makes,
can't pour with a mic. That's the one flaw about
Rookie move.
holding a
I've
mic
learned.
and having a beer
It's a lot of head.
sponsor is that you can't do both at the same time.
That's probably the most head you've ever got. So Mark, for listeners, Mark, if you haven't listened to his first episode, that episode was a lot about his career and what he's doing. He has a super cool career, and just a very interesting guy. We go back to fraternity days with, and just reminiscing before this episode, we forget sometimes how much friendship we actually have. You know what I mean?
We've done a lot of stuff together.
Oh yeah, we touched upon it a little bit last time with the road trip. I was just laughing about how you mentioned the way home story about the RV, and I wasn't mentioned at all, but I was there. So lots of connections. You guys,
Mark
of course,
remembers it all.
So I don't get mentioned in that episode, but last week, I'm kidding. But no, it's crazy. You guys were at my wedding and a lot of these big moments, and you were two of the first guys I told about Elliot.
Yeah.
And you guys asked what my biggest fear was, and I said that it was a girl. And once that is
You can't assume Elliot's gender.
oh, that's true. We did want like Amelia was when we were picking names like either or. We wanted like it's kind of funny. We wanted like gender neutral names as they call it,
That's so millennial parent of you.
but we had a different gender neutral name for a boy and for a girl. So like we liked the
It's
N
a
being the
gender
U.
leaning name.
Yeah, exactly.
I got
said,
you.
Well said.
I like names that are suitable for both boys and girls. You know?
Have you met a female Elliot though?
No, but
No.
you know, it's 2019. Anything could happen.
So your son is named Elliot.
Yes.
And yeah, the whole gender neutral thing. The way I think about it is, why even fucking mess with it? Name your kid. You have a kid. You're gonna spend $250,000 to $500,000 to $1 million on this kid, depending on how wealthy you
oh
are.
God, why did you bring that up?
And it's like fucking name it whatever you want. And if the kid wants to change gender, just take on it. Tell them to take on your name.
You want to name Hitler? Name Hitler, right?
If you don't like your name, you can just change it. Did you say Hitler?
Yes.
It would be Hitlery if it was a girl.
Is Hitler gender neutral? Like
Hitler's gender neutral. It was
Yeah,
the last name,
I've
wasn't
been
it?
watching.
I can't even tell you, which is pretty embarrassing. But
I've been rewatching Breaking Bad
oh
recently.
yes,
And-
ready for that movie coming up? Or-
Yeah. You stoked or what?
I have not. Like I've been thinking about rewatching it, but I haven't
Yeah.
found the time with the kid. But I'm
Yeah.
stoked for the movie, and it was actually kind of snuck up on me. Like I didn't realize it was a Netflix movie, which makes perfect sense.
It's so sick. It's
And-
being released on Netflix.
And,
yeah.
and not to interrupt, but the one thing I was like fascinated by this is like as I think about, I kind of did this with my podcast on Pod Drop. I talk about the streaming model and how it changes the way we consume and all that. And I was thinking like people right now might think Breaking Bad and think like AMC, the
Yeah.
the people that produced it, the channel. But like as people grow up and just like associate Breaking Bad is on Netflix, by coming out with the movie and producing the movie and exclusively showing the movie, they're kind of like in a way robbing
Stealing
AMC
yeah.
Breaking Bad. They're like when people will think Breaking Bad 10 years down the line, it's totally conceivable they'll just think Netflix, right? Which is kind of cool.
It's
You were saying that you were watching it. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to make one point about changing the name. Remember when Walt Jr. just all of a
Yes.
sudden starts calling himself? He wants to be called Flynn.
so
And that's,
You know, Walt Jr. Isn't he like in a different fraternity? Like, wasn't he a DU or something?
I can't remember.
Not in the story. The actor,
Like the actual actor?
which was like trippable, but we're not going to go into the specifics of that. But
well, no, I'm happy you guys actually brought up that tidbit because it also introduces the fact that Mark is he has his own podcast. He just briefly touched on it. We were actually on it as well.
yes,
And he does a little bit of a different take on podcasts where he releases them kind of all at once in something he calls a pod drop. And so if you like these kind of hot takes, Mark, I'd summarize you up as kind of sports, a little bit nerdy, like to talk about like these media hot takes,
Really good.
stuff on, like you said, you had comments on streaming,
Yep.
on when we were on your episode, we talked about Michael Jackson. So it's a little bit different than our podcast in where we just kind of shoot the shit. We talk about general life issues. You're actually finding stuff going on and kind of making a story about it, commenting on it, kind of journalistic almost.
Well, I like to think like podcasts have come so far. I think in the last like 4 or 5 years, they've been around for a while, but they're very much becoming like the new reading in a way. There's this one author,
100%.
Malcolm
Fuck
Gladwell,
reading.
really famous author, and he
Does
has
he have
this
a podcast?
He does have this podcast called Revisionist History. There's some really good episodes in it. It's also
Mhm.
not some not, but
Mhm.
first and foremost, he was always an author.
Yeah.
He released this new book. Couldn't tell you what it's about, but it did well enough. He sold the audiobook, as everyone does the audiobook. He reads the audiobook. He put in a couple like elements that are more like familiar with podcast, and he said on a podcast I was listening to that the audiobook sold better than the actual book, which is like unheard of. But it kind of makes sense, right? Like this author who's has a very popular podcast is like, why not make this book and just kind of blur the lines of, is it a book or is it just like a 7-8 hour like really deep dive podcast? And this is kind of like extra in my mind having a kid now, and I'm really trying to like think of like a time capsule to hopefully share like share the world he was born into, like 10, 15 years down the line, by like making him watch this or making him watch some or listen to some of my other podcasts and things like that.
Crazy idea. And we'll talk about all this. I'll finish up.
Bring him on the pod. He's the third host.
Dude, okay, no.
No,
but
yeah.
I was going to make that joke. Why didn't you bring him for this podcast? But no, because I just wanted to finish introducing you before we get into all these topics. But I just had a wild idea before I wrap that up is this podcast could be you collecting all the things you want Elliot to hear about and like your
That's
takes
true.
on it. Okay, side note, we can go into that. So if you want to hear more about Mark's job, listen to his previous episode. He works at Rogers. He works production in the sports editing. Is that how you describe it?
Sportsnet, I'm basically a highlight content producer.
Really cool
Associate
job.
producer.
Interesting hours, interesting projects. He talks about it in that episode. Go back and watch that.
Or you can also watch or listen to Mark's
Mark's podcast,
podcast
exactly.
as well
Or-
that we were on.
Watch Sportsnet. We need more people watching TV nowadays. Traditional
Keep Mark
TV, yeah.
employed. Watch the Sportsnet.
That would be a big one too.
Well,
Yeah.
So that's all that. That's all that stuff because this is your second time on.
Don't watch Jay and Dan. We don't speak those names.
No. So
I've never even heard of them.
I don't know.
Is
who
that
they
like
are.
number one
The
hit
enemy?
list at Sportsnet?
I don't. Does the foot bother itself with the ant? Like, does it even think about the ant? I don't know. I think I butchered the quote, but you know what I'm trying to say. Fuck TSN. Actually, I might work there one day.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Just only
Sports
watch where
are
Mark
great.
works. But yeah, so look into Mark for all that stuff because chapter 2, Marcus has a child.
Yes.
And it's weird because we're sitting here side by side, peers, same age, same relative experiences for the last 10 or so years, minus the fact that you got married, had a chid.
Chiddle.
You chid had a chid.
Yeah.
And bought a house. And you're the first guest in our age group with a child, with a house, with all this stuff that, like, we got to fucking talk about it.
Yeah.
You got to, I bet there's girls out there that when the royal baby came around, they're like, I want a kid. This is, you had one. We can tell the 20-year-olds
Yes.
about what this is like. And I don't even know where to begin, but I guess the birth.
The delivery room.
I'm just gonna start off by saying I was kind of mentioning off air how much in the lead up in the 9 months or whatever, how much of your mind, or at least mine was on the birth, and it's all about how is this 4 to 8 hour experience gonna be, what to expect, what do I need to know, and all this, and it's it just kind of happens,
Well,
humans
there's
have been making
professionals in the room.
that too, but humans been making babies for a long time.
Oh, I got you.
And it just kind of
it's kind of like a shit. Like your body knows how to do it. You don't really
Bingo.
think about it.
I'm sure Amelia would love that comparison. And the thing is, it's the reality is it's the 50 years after when you're taking care of this kid that maybe I should have read a book or two that Amelia kept putting on my desk.
Yeah.
how to
Well, they
be a
didn't come in an
dad.
audiobook.
Have you?
So
I didn't do any of the reading.
You had classes or anything?
We did go to whatever the
Le
class.
Mans? What is it?
Yeah, that's kind of basically prenatal class is what it's called. You can there's some private ones you could pay $100 or whatever. We did the public one. It was a full day. I had worked the night before watching sports, so I came home at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The class was at 9.
Yeah.
So we walked into this class and it's empty, and I'm thinking to myself oh, this is gonna be so awkward. It's just gonna be us and the instructor. I'm half asleep. I got to pay all this attention, and I was let's throw the instructor a bone. Let's sit at the front of the class, right? We sit at the front of the class. 5 seconds later, a herd of people come in and just fill in the back. So my fears of it being empty were not. Now I'm just in the front, falling asleep.
Oh, no.
And it's an 8-hour class, and a lot of it's
Not exciting?
8 hours.
it's not exciting, and a lot of it's kind of common sense.
Yeah.
And in the end, we're kind of learning breastfeeding techniques, and they give you a doll, the typical doll, and our doll had I don't know what it was. It had some it had those eyes that would flutter whether you turn it upside down. And
I
there
know
was
the
something
one.
there was something in one of the eyes where it was a lazy eye, and I could not stop laughing at this doll, and the instructor was giving me the dirtiest looks, but I was
Because you
on
cannot
no-
make jokes of that.
Yeah.
You're okay, our baby's in we got a weird one.
It was crazy. But then, the day actually comes, and the one piece of advice, if I can still a piece of advice, is something I had no experience or any knowledge of before the whole going into this, is midwives. So a midwife, when people think, well, let me ask you, what do you think when you hear midwife for the first time? What do you?
I
The
think
midwife
of tub
helps.
births. I think of those TV shows where they do these natural births, and it's whack, and like the girls like honored, like do like a weird backwards delivery.
And they're like humming and
They're,
like singing.
humming and like burning like a
Incense, yeah.
That's what I think.
But they also help with like post birth and stuff, right?
They
like
do.
you can or maybe that's more of a night nurse type deal. But
So the
Night
they're free. I want to get that out of the way too. It's like, as someone who's super cheap, it's free. It's a public service. Brampton had their own, but I'm sure every city kind of does. And they actually like take the place of the nurse. In a perfect situation, if you're giving birth and you have a midwife and the birth goes without a hiccup, there will be no nurse until the baby comes out, and then maybe they'll do a quick check. But this midwife is through the process. So you come in, 6 months leading before the birth, you meet with them. And then a couple months later, you meet with them again. As you get closer and closer, they ramp up. You start meeting every couple weeks.
Yeah, and then you start hanging out, having dinner parties.
Funny you say that. The midwife who birthed Elliot, I saw at the launch party for mid-20s.
Like,
I
what?
remember
Her
that.
name was Brianna. She
Graham's girlfriend, Brianna.
What?
Yeah.
Was
it
your
was such
midwife?
a trip. It was such a trip.
Yeah.
Why
I
is
forgot about this.
Why
actually.
is this the smallest world
I know.
known to man?
And it was crazy because like when I went to the launch party, it was like my first outing like since the birth. So like I didn't know how to like talk to
You
humans.
thought you
or
were
anything.
hallucinating.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
You're like, am I having another child? Where am I?
all this soon? But they are the greatest resource. Like so you don't meet with Brianna every time. I met with like a rotating cast, and the job is interesting. Like they basically have like, they're like firefighters. They're on for 2 weeks where they got to respond to any birth, and they're off for like a week, and then they're on
Okay.
for 2 weeks. So they do this rotation, and the day comes, you give them a call. They basically come to the hospital with you. They're in the room, and it almost felt like a cheat code. Like I didn't need to read the book because like
Yeah.
I'm meeting with them every 2 weeks. They're bringing things up. They're
Yeah.
answering questions
Are you
that
ready
I
for
brought
this?
up.
Is that there?
And there's and the idea, or I guess the mission statement of a midwife is to like help you fulfill your birth plan. The stigma is that they are like heavily into like natural births, no drugs, all that. And I guess it bears true. Like, I mean, Amelia, bless her soul, no epidural, which is like in the spine, no drugs whatsoever.
Fuck, dude.
I know. And it's like, and you hear people too, like, I mean, this is maybe a bad example, but I'm watching, Amelia's really into like Teen Mom. She describes it as like a great show to like feel better about your mothering when you see like really bad mothers. But there's there's another one called Unexpected, which is basically like the same
Accident.
fucking,
The
the
same
same
thing,
formula.
accident, yeah.
Like basically white trash having kids. And one of them was like talking about how nervous she was and how she was like, I heard it was really painful. It's like, no shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like I'm worried about how the epidural goes. It's like, not only are you like already quitting, like you're the baby's not even coming yet, and you're already saying I'm having epidural. You're also freaking out about the epidural. Like, you know what I mean? There's different ranges. I want to say one thing though before I go into this anymore is like Amelia was a champ, though a lot of other people, if they need to, if anyone has, I don't sure this audience has had a lot of kids, but if somebody needed a C-section or an epidural or whatever, like power to them. Like everyone is their own person and all that, but like,
Dude,
it was pretty awesome to see Amelia do it.
I would do
No
it.
drugs.
I would do an epidural. Like I would do a fucking epidural. I think my mom did.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but
so when you're talking about your birth plan, is that people choosing whether they're going to have a C-section or epidural and stuff beforehand?
So the funny thing is,
were they gonna do a birth in a river?
I tried to make this like ongoing bit with Brianna and the other midwives where I tried to pretend that there was like this like deep-seated hatred to the nurses because like there was one midwife who would always make little comments about like,
Oh, a nurse wouldn't do that.
oh no, or like the nurses try to do this, or the nurse might say this, but this is really what you need to do. And I would like leave there with Amelia and we would like build up this narrative of like it being like a gang war between nurses and midwives. Brianna once told me to be quiet because I might get her in trouble like during the birth because I was like trying to bring the joke up again. But
During the birth, you're making stand-up.
there is Amelia's not laughing at any of it. There is a belief that sometimes hospitals are really trying to just like get you in and out. So though a C-section is for like an emergency, and many times and most times it is for an emergency, sometimes the emergency is like this mom's not going to be able to push out this baby
Like
because she just like she's just not in the mindset to push it out. And the hospital's job is just to get someone in and out as quick as possible. So there could be a conflict there. So the midwife is supposed to be the liaison. Tell the nurse, "Fuck you, nurse." No, I'm kidding. the gang war that's going on.
This is their birth plan. I'm here to facilitate it. The thing is, what I'm thinking is, you're like, "Oh, midwives are free," and blah blah blah, and I'm sitting here the whole time thinking, is birth not free with OHIP?
No, it is free if you want to just like. Here's the thing, it's a resource that's free that everyone should at least know about and maybe research their local one and see if it's for them. Because like, without a midwife, if we were just like doing it off books and your mother's hearsay from 30 years ago or 40 years ago, and they had, like, you know what I mean? There's no reason, in my opinion, not to. Unless you really want that epidural already and you just don't want anyone to tell you otherwise. But it definitely made my like research for the birth a little bit less. I just took it on myself and said, hey, I can lean on these midwives for that process. Of course, you're never ready for like the taking home process.
But how many Google searches have you done since, having the kid at home?
Not many. Not really. Like Amelia does a lot more of that. I think that's just like the internal mothering nature of mothers, and also like I was telling Robbie, like,
no, Trudeau says that doesn't exist.
Politics is just like
we're equal. So I can do everything that I can do that as well too.
Yeah. He also brown face, but
yeah. No, I'm obviously just joking around. First, I just wanted to give a shout out. That's so impressive that she did it without drugs. I don't even know why drugs are bad. It's just impressive that she did it without it.
Is there a stigma around doing drugs?
There is a few, like for example, if like certain drugs need to be administered, the baby has to by default be at the hospital a little bit longer under care, because a lot of the drugs will also like slow the process down a little bit. Like it will kind of calm the baby internally, and I mean, you might add a couple hours, but if you're not through the pain, some people think it's worth it. But I wouldn't say stigma, but I just go back to the idea that like people have been giving birth for very, very, very long time, for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And
they
of
used
course,
to get them drunk though for the birth.
Yeah.
They used to do some whack stuff.
Well, the midwives that wasn't part of our birth plan. So
wasn't your birth plan? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Here's a farmer in the sky. Let's go. Yeah.
What's an
impressive.
average length for a birth?
It's funny you say that. Well, so the story of the actual birthday was you're supposed to like time contractions, and if they get close enough, like the one thing that's not true is the water breaking myth of the movies.
Oh,
like it
no.
can happen, but it's not like, oh no, and you're like
that
swimming
movie scene.
like,
Oh, that actually doesn't happen.
It's always like clean up in aisle 4, like it's a huge
No, the
puddle.
camera pans down
Yeah.
and she just looks at him and they have this like
Is this happening?
movie magic like, oh,
It's actually happening. Yeah.
She's just like pissed on the floor basically.
So the or at least the midwives told us that it wouldn't necessarily be this like flood like Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Like it might just be like, oh, like I'm peeing and it won't stop kind of feeling.
I got you.
Amelia's water didn't break. Like it's water breaking, birth happening isn't the set in stone order. So she had these contractions, were getting close enough. We called the midwives. They come to I'll just leave it at like they do a check. They were shocked about how far along Amelia was.
Okay.
So like, I don't know what they thought. I don't know what Brianna thought of us before, but she obviously didn't think we were very tough. But Amelia very much pushed it to the very limit to when you should go to the hospital.
She's like, I'm good.
So that's why I bring it up, is because if some people are like, it's coming, the baby's coming, I need to go to the hospital. It's like, it could be a pain tolerance thing. It could be you're about to be a mother and you're nervous and there's so many factors and this and that, but you might go to the hospital a little too early. The hospital at that point would be like, they might send you home. They might also be like, oh, you're here. Like, we'll bring you in, but be ready to wait. The process for us was about 6 hours. There was this worry about, there's always like little things like Amelia needed to take this one drug because there was this one little, slight worry from a ultrasound where she needed to take this one drug before the baby came, but not close enough. And they were trying to time it out. And long story short, they're like, well, we need to wait till at least 4 o'clock before you start to push, because the drug needs to be in you for like 20 minutes first. Or we put it in you, an hour ago. It needs to be in there for at least an hour and a half. Long story short, they're like, the pushing could be like 20 minutes. I'm like, 20 minutes? You mean we've been waiting 4 hours? I'm like, 20 minutes and it's done. I'm like, yes, like I'm like getting time home for the Raptors game. Like, let's go, right? It wasn't 20 minutes. It was like 2 hours of that
Labor.
of the like the hard laboring before the 4 hours of like the pre-labor, I guess you would call it. I think it is called that. And yeah, surreal experience. Unfortunately, Elliot was born with what's called meconium. And
Is that superpowers?
I wish. It means is when a baby is in the womb, there's a chance that they poop themselves while they're still in the womb, because the process of being birthed is like a traumatizing one, because you're like, I'm just in the womb, and now it's like,
Yeah.
fuck, I gotta get out of here.
Dude,
like,
I came up folded in half.
did you shit yourself though?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember.
I don't remember. So because of that, nurses did have to come in the room. I mentioned before that like ideally the nurse would never have to have come, but the nurses need to do a check, and it turns out there was some worry that he had swallowed some of his meconium, which is a nice way to say he ate his own shit. So great start to his life. And he had to be we were in the hospital in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Neonatal or whatever. And for
Neonatal
3
matrix.
nights, longest 3 nights
Because
of
of
my
the
life.
meconium.
Yeah, like they,
Need to make sure he doesn't
I
have it.
honestly thought I was going home that day. I was like 6 o'clock, and I was joking. The Raps were actually playing the next day, so I was like, you know what? Even
I'll
if
at least make it home by 6
even
o'clock
if I
tomorrow.
gotta stay a night, I'm good, right? This was during the run, and it turns out, no, 3 nights. I ended up going home to take out the garbage and do some things at home, and
He's doing
watch-
he's doing finger quotes for the
Yes,
listeners.
yeah. I watched the game with my brother because he was actually looking after a dog, and you know, at the point when you're at the hospital for those 3 nights, it's like there's only so much you could do.
Yeah,
Baby's
you
obviously
could just
sleeping a
stare
lot,
out a window.
and Amelia allowed me to like watch this Raps game. And when Amelia was born, when Elliot was born, the Raps just
When Amelia was born.
Amelia was born. The
Raps.
Elliot has only known victory. Like the Leafs, this is their year.
Wow.
Elliot doesn't. I mean, except for the Jays, but like,
Well, then who cares about those?
yeah, Sportsnet. But
Elliot's gonna be like one of those kids in where's it, Boston, that holds up one of those signs where it's like 6 victories in my lifetime or 6 championships.
oh
you
yeah.
know?
Well, hopefully if we get those
Yeah.
wins, but
Dude, I have a little bit of
Jays.
a whack question. So obviously Elliot's healthy now.
yes,
Congratulations.
super healthy, super
He's
happy.
not eating his own.
Not
shit
eating his own
anymore.
shit.
That's why
anymore,
we can make these jokes, is because, you know, he's all good. He's at home. We saw a picture. We can put it in the pod here of him looking like a dope little boy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Weird questions I have for you. You got married in
Shoot.
a church.
Yes.
Are you guys religious?
Amelia was born and raised very much in a church community, and
Sorry, I know historically. Sorry, my question is, are you guys as a family going forward?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so
Do you go to church weekly?
Yeah, unfortunately, because of my work,
Yeah.
it's not weekly.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm off a Sunday, and with the rare exception of like this Saturday, I worked till 3 a.m., like till the very button. Like I work 5 to 3 almost every day,
Mhm.
but often I'm getting home at like 1:30. In that case, it's like nice. But this was a case where I was like, I can't do a 6-hour turnaround and fall asleep in church. Like, what's the
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
That being said, like we are like contributing members to church,
so
financially and all that. But
with Elliot, obviously, like there's some religious considerations, stuff like that. But what I was thinking is, I don't even know if this is related.
did we circumcise?
Yes.
I could see it coming. No, we didn't.
Okay, why?
Well, your boy's not
I know
circumcised.
that. I don't know how I know that. I do know that though.
Oh,
We
look
lived
at
in a
that.
house.
Yes. And the other thing is like you have to. Well, one, it's no longer paid for, which is like it used to be like kind of a regular thing, and now it's like it's not much, but it did kind of color our rationale. It's like if it's not mandatory and it's not even free, it starts in your head. It's like, is it that important, right? Like it's not like, oh, your 2-month shots every baby needs to get, like boom, 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 boom. Like those are free. Those are covered by the government. They're like mandatory. It's like, it's not necessary. And of course, it definitely factors in that like I'm not, and I can't believe I'm talking about this on camera.
No, we
we talk about dicks all the time.
talk about dicks all the time, dude. Big Dick Podcast or
How
medium
much
dicks,
does
actually.
snipping cost?
Oh, it's
these
not
days?
much. I sound like I sound so cheap, but I think it's like $100. Another thing too is I remember, oddly enough, shout out to Mr. Mulford from high school, my old football coach. He had a son, and we started talking dicks, and we were like, I brought it up, and he told me a story that he actually went to get it done, and they're like, oh, you need to be in the room when it happens, and he was like, oh, and my son started crying, and I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I took him home. I was like, really? He's like, is it that big of a deal? Like,
No,
you know
it's
what I
not.
mean?
No, and that's why I'm trying to figure out if, because I thought about it weirdly the other day. I was like, would I do that?
Okay, sorry. I thought about it weirdly the other day. I wasn't sure if you were talking about the idea of circumcision
The idea
or
of
someone
circumcision.
specific dick.
No,
but-
the idea of circumcision.
Okay.
Like, and I just like, because I knew you were coming on, and I was just like, why do I want to ask this? Do people still do it? Why did people do it? Why?
I think it's actually becoming less popular. I think there was like a time when a lot of people did it, but just from my friend circle has changed so much since I've been married. For those who, I think I mentioned on the previous pod, but my wife's a little bit older, 50. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, she's 53.
She's 31 not in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Remember that? Buy a gift. So her friends all have kids. A lot of them are having their third kid. We just found out. Like, it's
Damn.
funny. You try to
Wow.
like time it up, and you're like,
Oh,
yo, like,
let's line up with Nancy.
yeah. So we can have our kids like
Yeah.
one, obviously ship them, as the internet likes to say, and be like, oh, we can, we'll be like, our kids will get married, and we'll be like family and all that, which is like absurd to think, but kind of cool to.
Wait, what is this term? Ship them?
You never heard ship?
No.
There's like it's like an
Where did
internet.
this drop?
Like it's like that app Ship where you hook people up.
It's used a lot in like television. So it's like I was about to use Breaking Bad, terrible example, but let's say like Game of Thrones. Oh, people like to ship Brienne and whatever the dude who got his hand cut. I'm so bad with Game of Thrones names, by the way, but you get what I'm saying. It's like
Brienne of Tarth and Jamie
Jamie
Lannister.
Lannister. People like to ship them. I can't believe I forgot
Sir
Jamie
Brienne.
Lannister, right? But you guys, so, throwback. You guys were talking about Game of Thrones way back when it was on. I love your analysis of it. There's something I love about analysis, in particular of that show, when people like don't. There's so many ranges of how much people love it, right? It's like
Yeah.
you know everything. You read the books, you know all the names, and there's
Yeah.
people just like shooting the shit, talking about the action. I love. I don't know why I'm bringing it up. It's actually kind of interesting when we're talking about 2019 and about like time capsuling. I always think about like what the big things are this year. It's like Avengers, the last Avengers movie, the Joker movie, which I saw and isn't very good, by the way. Game of Thrones and all this, and of course the sports, the Raptors win the championship, all this stuff. It's like I hope I can find a way to like make Elliot appreciate this when he's older, kind of thing. But
Well, I guess that's the next transition, right?
Yeah,
I did your job.
Well, you do have a podcast as well, so you kind of you have a basic understanding of keeping the story going,
Yeah.
moving along.
Yeah.
I've got a question about that. Elliot, wanting him to grow up and like all these things that you like. Have you thought about, you see parents teaching their kids wild stuff and getting like world records, like youngest like skateboarder kid or
Yeah.
like youngest kid to do this. Have you thought about like
Forcing your kid to be great.
yeah, in some
Every
areas
day.
or like
Every
like training
day.
him in certain skills or aspects?
Well, the first thing is like the big question, I guess, a lot of like sport parents. I'm gonna like bring it back a little bit to sports because like that's a big thing too. Obviously, in my life,
high school athlete of the year.
high school athlete of the year.
Yeah, we get it.
Homeschooled, no big deal. I made the same joke last podcast. Apologize for listening. But it's the big question now is like specialization versus generalization. Do you let your kids play all the sports, or do you let your kids play one or two sport and force them into like you're only playing tennis? You got to be the greatest tennis player ever. I can only color from my experience, which in a way was like I played everything, but I also like look at me now, right? Like I'm not in the show, so
Yeah, but that's genetics, dude.
That's exact. But unfortunately, Elliot has my genetics.
Oh, okay.
He's half black though. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like the movie scene where the baby comes out half black and you're in the delivery room and you're like, okay.
It's like, oh, is he just covered in some of that shit that he ate? Oh
Dude.
no, that's just okay.
Yo, I was in Los Angeles, and what's that basketball player, Steve Nash? Rick Nash, Steve Nash.
Steve Nash,
Steve
yeah,
Nash,
we're
yeah.
Canadian way back, yeah.
Yeah. And that happened to him, right?
What, he was born half black? Or?
Yeah. No, his wife.
baby.
Oh, his baby was, okay.
Yeah. So I'm sitting at the table. He's at the table next to us. And Buddy's like, at our table, he's like, that's Steve Nash. It's Ben Djurdjevic.
Oh, yeah.
When we were visiting
Oh,
him.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no kidding. And like, just thinking like, what a cool thing. We're in LA first night. You know, there's a celebrity. And then Ben's next line was, yeah, like that. He tells a story.
He's like sitting right there
I'm
in earshot.
sitting right there and I'm looking back at this guy. And basically, his wife had cheated on him with a teammate.
What?
Yes.
I've never heard this story.
You know, is it real?
I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't hear it as well until Ben
That's
made
the
that
first time I
comment,
heard
so-
it was, yeah, you know what? I think I Googled it after.
Canadian, great.
Because I was like, that's crazy. He's such a big deal. But I'm hearing the story and I'm just looking back at him like that happens to real
He's
people.
like, dude, stop looking at me.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, dude, it happened. I know what story you're hearing right now. I know what's going on.
He just gets that everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
But anyway, sorry, back
Yeah.
back to you. Way more important.
Back, what was I talking about? Oh, the sports. It honestly, is it bad that I was recently thinking about like, so Amelia is a private school teacher.
Mhm.
Super awesome, growing, successful Christian private school in Brampton. Unfortunately, a little bit smaller than your typical school. And with the trend, especially with like, there was a player yesterday, I don't know if you heard this, like Mason Rudolph, he almost like was killed on the football field yesterday. He got hit so hard, he was you know you've been hit hard when they have to like screw off the face mask before taking off the helmet. It was one of those, and he gets
Like
up and
spinal.
you could see in his eyes, you're like, dude has no idea where he's being.
Yeah.
Point is, more and more I'm hearing people say like, oh, my kid's not going to play football. My kid's not going to play football. It's like, great. Thank you.
Because Elliot's going to come
Let's
right
go.
through here.
Yeah, Elliot, drive it right through that hole. Point is, I was thinking, like, I've had this conversation with Amelia. I'm like, okay, so he's going to our private school for sure. But when he goes to high school, what about maybe getting him into a public school? And she's like, you know what? That's a lot of people do that. I'm kind of okay with that. So I'm at work, like tired. I'm like researching which Brampton places still have football teams and all this, and like, are they in our zone and all this? It's like the most insane thought. And I thought to myself, I can be even more insane. How can I create a football team at Elliot's school? I'm like, you know, if I ask the principal if I can coach a flag football team in middle school and get all his friends into it and then groom that whole process and grow the program from the ground up and then get like this and that, and it's just like, what am I doing? This is 15 years from now. Like, who knows? But
So the day-to-day of raising this kid
is thinking about how he's going to be in the show.
right. So because like the stuff that you're doing now, looking after him,
Giving him small dumbbells, just like,
well, like, but as you're saying, like, okay, this is gonna stem into a few questions, and I don't know if they're gonna come up in the story.
no,
but
go ahead.
The day-to-day, it sounds like, is not as crazy or different. It's like you kind of know what you're doing. When he's hungry, you got to feed him. You know, you take care of him, you look after him.
Yep.
And you're getting that groove. You're through like the rough month where it was just, you know, on and off, crying or sleeping. And so, you know, that stuff isn't as crazy or scary. It's more just once you get in the rhythm of it, you do it. A lot of your time is spent making those future decisions, thinking about
Yes.
like, oh, how are we going to raise this kid? My question is, now that you have a child, how did your brain switch from your dreams and goals? Whereas like I might be sitting on the
Yeah.
computer being like, oh, how am I going to get my music video out there? Or like whatever. How much of your career is still on the table? How much is it thinking about his? Oh, and I
That's a
forget
good
I
question.
forget the
That is
second
a good
part of
one.
that question. But
I mean, it's tough. Like, you really do. It is an insane feeling having a kid. And it's like, you know, I love my dog. And I always thought, like, I never love anything
How
more.
is Zoe, by the way?
Zoe's good. She's starting to, like, show signs that she's an older dog.
Yeah.
okay.
But she gets along with the baby?
She gets along. He's just starting to, like, really, like, recognize her and,
Yeah.
and like, react and sometimes be very fascinated. So, like, in bed today, like, Zoe jumped up and we were all in bed and he was, like, grabbing at her and pulling, and she was like surprisingly okay with it. Even though whenever I try to pet her, she like runs away. She's like, she's so over me at this point. But I won't sound too heartbroken. Having a kid, it's hard not to think about. And there's like this dichotomy between me and my wife, and she's like at home all the time with him,
Because she's on leave.
and she's on leave, and she's, you know, she can get lonely, as I'm sure you have to, because you can't really do much. As much as like we say we're out of the rough time, a lot of that is like my wife
You
still
can't leave your sight. You can't leave someone's sight.
Yeah, and we're sleep training right now, which is the process of like putting them to bed at the same time every day so that they can sleep through the night. And like Elliot has to this point, and there's always chance of regression when they teeth, when they go through growth spurts, all this. Right now, he's sleeping like 12 hours straight almost, with occasional wake up, which is like amazing. Yeah, I was a great sleeper. Never an issue with me sleeping. Waking up, that's a little tougher. But it does consume your life. And when the dichotomy that I was talking about is that like Amelia's like, I need more interaction. Like, I wish you were home when you weren't working. Like, and to me, it's like, yeah, but how long have you ever been away from Elliot? The one time your parents babysat him when we went to see Spider-Man in theaters, and that was your longest way. I got to be away from him 12 hours every day I go to work, commuting back, right? Like, so it's kind of like meeting in the middle there. When it comes to like thinking about those actions, it almost helps to like just kind of take it a day at a time. And the biggest advice I can think of is like, whenever you do something, a decision, like I think the most tangible way of saying it is like, Elliot, he needs snap right now, but he isn't having it. He's just he's not tired, or unfortunately sometimes babies, as you've seen in movies or in life, or even like little kids in the market, they're like, I'm not tired. Like, they're just overtired and they don't even know it. And that can like make them cranky and they don't even understand and they just lash out. It's like whenever you do anything, whether it's like the decision to, no, he needs to sleep, or like, okay, let's play for a bit, is like, why are you doing what you're doing, and what is the point? What is the long-term implication of what you're trying to do?
That sounds exhausting.
It can be. Being a father is kind of exhausting, but so that's the best example. It's like, he needs sleep. You know what? Like, he's so sad. Like, look at those tears. Oh, I got to pick him up. And it's like, why am I doing this? So then when he's 5 and he does this, I have to do this again? Or when he's 15 and like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the end goal? Is to have this kid by age 18 ready to go to university, and it's like everything, or college or whatever, right? I said that so like, or college, even though we had a conversation on the last episode about like how great college was. But that's kind of the way I think about it, is like, while you're taking it like moment by moment, except for of course I'm trying to plan his football career, you're also just like with each moment thinking like, what is the goal? Like, what is the end result of this action, right?
I just wanted to loop back to the thinking about yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Okay, don't.
Yeah, I was just going to make the same comment about how you obviously have career goals with Sportsnet and journalism and all that stuff going on in your life. Have you found it hard to balance, goals with the baby, or time with the baby, between your own personal?
Definitely things like pod drop.
Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to know, do you still have the same goals? Are you still thinking about how you're going to advance your career? And because you talked a lot about goals in the last podcast.
Yeah.
Or
throw them out the window. I'm just.
Yeah, you're like, my life's not important anymore. It's all about him.
Well, I mean, the ultimate goal, not to be like flowery or whatever, but it's like, surround yourself with as many people that you love and that love you back, right? And if it's that, and which means having a kid and all that, and maintaining the peace and the happiness within that like ecosystem, which means, I even brought it up on the last pod, which I just listened to for research coming in, was like my dream, and I still say it is to become like the producer of the live event. Chase, Raptors,
in the
whatever.
truck, yeah.
And I even brought back how when I met with the Raptors producer, Dan Gladman, then when I told him I'm getting married, he like a bell kind of went off. And he's like, whoa, like, you're way too young. What do you and looking at it now, he's a bit older. I think he's turning 40 soon. He's not married.
Yeah.
He's not whatever. And it's like that job, as I described last time, he travels with the team every game.
Right.
He's produced every game for like almost 10 years now. It is harder to have a family life if you're doing that. Unfortunately, long story short, too, at work, some of the structuring has changed. We long story short, we've unionized, so some of the upward progression is becoming
seniority now.
Basically.
That's
so
wild.
it's becoming a little less. It's not as easy just to like, I'm gonna outwork everybody and move to the top.
Yeah,
which is tough for me because like I'm driven in a way that I really do like to always do my best, and now that incentives are like whatever, but without going into that, because that's not even really like important when it comes to goals, it's like it does come back to that family. Is there a chance that I look down the line that I want to coach this football team, or I want to coach house league hockey, and it's like, oh, you could work around my current work schedule to make those things happen. It's like you could not coach house league hockey, if you were doing this, whatever, if you were a Raptors producer
Right.
traveling all those
Yeah.
games. And it's like, when it comes to there, I talked back on to the previous episode, it's like, money has never been the biggest motivation. It's always been like just being happy with my job, but that also
What
extends
about money
everything.
to support him though?
Well, that's another good point too, right? And like, how many kids do we want to have, and all that. And right now, money, like with Amelia off work, like I think I underestimated. Like I always consider myself a decent budgeter, but like
Yeah.
like when Amelia went off work, like we revisit the budget and we're
Yeah,
like,
save
oh,
100 here, don't circumcise, get a midwife. No,
we look at it, we're like, I did the math, and when the first count was like, okay, so we are at minus $18 a month. I'm like, okay, so you do that for a year, we're like $150, right? Like I can make that on like and then of course a car broke down, a laundry machine, a washing machine broke, a microwave broke. A terrible experience with a leak in our house with black mold that had to be like, long story short, like things just came in. There was like, without Amelia working, there's no
slush.
buffer.
There was no
buffer.
slush. Yeah.
Everything was just being added on. And it's like,
now
it
you're
is-
in 10 grand debt.
Yeah.
Like,
something
but
like that.
I mean, like
10,
that was a
12
joke,
grand, yeah.
but like that's how it
Yes,
happens.
exactly.
It's like you don't expect your car's gonna
It can
break
creep
down,
up.
or and if you have no buffer room, yeah, but she will go back to work.
Exactly. And we'll get through it. And
Mhm.
we had some advice from some family friends too that were like, say, be ready for that, and just know that like, don't let that consume you, because, you know, they say a lot of relationships, like that's always a big point of contention is money.
Yeah.
It's just like, it will work out in the long run. Amelia will go back to work, but then will she go back to work long enough for us to get out of that debt in order for her to have another kid?
Oh shit!
Stuff like that, right?
Do you want to
So
have another kid?
I think 2 is like locked in stone. Like
Yeah.
it would have to be a terrible misfortune for us for us to only have one. Amelia's really set on like, oh, you know, single children are weird. I don't know. Is Kevin a single child?
Kev has a sister. Oh wait,
Okay.
okay. You want to hop in there?
What's up?
Single child or no?
No sister.
Okay,
Older
see.
sister.
Mhm.
So I mean, I'm a goalie. I'm a weirdo, but that's not the like. Single children can also be weirdos. They can also be driven though. You hear successful.
Wonder how
But
many single children are goalies?
it's a
What's
deep
the
dive
correlation
study.
there?
It's not always true. Not all goalies are weird, but most goalies are weird.
Most goalies are weird.
Yeah, that's
I
for
think.
sure. And not all single children are weird.
Yeah,
most single children are weird. Yeah.
Well, just generalizing here,
Yeah.
but I think a second child would be great. I would love like if our first was a girl, the second one would be like such a stressful like it needs to be a boy, or like let's go 3, let's
Dude,
go
you got
4.
the boy out of the way.
I got the boy. The next one's all gravy. If I had to pick, I mean, no one's asking. I'll just fucking drive the conversation myself. I have my own podcast. I'd say girl next. It'd be
Yeah,
great to have the boy,
yeah.
the girl.
it's called the Millionaire's Family.
Exactly.
A boy and a girl.
Do I get $1 million if this happens?
No, they cost you $1 million.
Oh, yeah. And you got the dog. Hopefully, she'll still be around.
Dude, I sorry.
You spoke a little bit about how your friend groups have changed.
Yes.
So, do you find yourself hanging out like a lot more with parents and people in
Dads.
the community and like dads, moms?
Yeah, there's a couple, like couples that live close to us in Brampton. And of course, Amelia's older friends from back home. But like, obviously, I'm spending more time with the ones in Brampton. And yeah, like one of the guys, I've become like, he's one of my best buds. And he has 2 younger children that like look at me like I am like a god. I love it. They're like, you know what I mean? I'm oddly enough like just a little bit younger
Do you
than
play
him.
video games with them or something? And
Oh my! I have a. Oh, I shouldn't be bragging about this. Oh, I'm in 10,000 debt. Well, I have a racing wheel at home. I have this racing wheel at home.
I do too.
And it's like one of the legit ones that has like,
Logitech.
yeah, basically.
Okay.
It has like force feedback and the
Yeah.
pedals and all that.
And you showed the
this-
kids.
Yeah, this like 4-year-old I had like basically babysit him for like an afternoon once, and I was like, I just put this thing on a stool so it could like his little tiny feet could reach, and just like let him go at it. And every 20 minutes he's like, Mark, I'm stuck, and like somehow he would like drive the car under a rock and a bridge in like such a tight space that there was no way to get out. But yeah, it was like I don't know if it's the video games, but I think it's just kind of that like when I had first met this family and spending more time with them, I didn't have a kid, so I at least
You were excited
maybe,
to see kids.
or I was going to say maybe the kid was more excited to see this like adult who's not a father, who can kind of be like bridge the gap between adulthood. Like I'm an overgrown child. I have a fucking racing wheel at home, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know
100%.
what I mean? So I'm not shocked, but like it is really cool to have these other couples with kids and kind of been exposed to that experience as, you know, I was going under the same idea of becoming a dad, and like they're having their third now, and we're like, oh yeah, let's ship your daughter. They don't have a daughter for sure. They have 2 boys.
Make
so
a daughter so we can do this.
Yes. Or it's also 2019.
Okay, make one of your boys a daughter. So
that's what Amelia always says when I say we have another boy. It's like, we have another boy. Do we need to have a third? It's like, no, I'll just treat one of them like a girl, or like I'll just raise. She says it's power tip. 2019.
2019. It's almost 2020. Imagine what's going to happen in that year.
Oh my gosh.
You joke about the shipping thing, but I feel like it's common over in where is it, like What
arranged marriages?
Like arranged marriages.
Yeah,
that
what a
they
swerve
actually
there,
do
Rob.
this.
It's
How would he know that? What the
it's
fuck
common knowledge. It's common knowledge.
I don't care.
It's funny because Amelia's group of friends, like her, I hate to say church friends. It sounds like a bad term, but whatever. Her group of friends that she grew up in the church at home, a lot of them did marry people that they knew when they were kind of young. Like they kind of very much. She came from a smaller town, so like it's not unheard of that like you married someone that you knew since you were 12 and whatever. So I don't know if Amelia maybe like keeps that in mind, and she's kind of like she's
who they gonna
Amelia went for the big city boy.
Oh yeah.
So you were the real catch.
I was the brain drain. I took her away from the small town and brought her to Brampton.
The big city now. Have you ever seen the TV show Crashing?
No.
Okay. It's about
Bad Drivers?
No, it's about a comedian.
Brampton and Bad Drivers are like hand in hand, but a comedian. Go on.
It's about Pete Holmes. Do you know Pete Holmes?
Yes.
It's like his story. He grew up like church, like married, like high school church camp, like sweetheart, and then becomes a comedian. It's really jokes. You'll like it. Just a recommendation. People out there, I watched it in a fucking weekend, 3 seasons.
Oh,
it's that good.
That's a bingeable show.
But you'll like it, is what I'm saying. And you watch a lot of shit. So.
How do you like Brampton?
I watch a lot of TV. Brampton is. I kept using this excuse for the first year. I was like, oh, it's just a commuter place. Like I'm just driving to and from. It's like I've been there for 2 years. I need to have an opinion on it now, I guess. Bad Drivers. Like
legitimate.
You know what though? It's like, and I want to say this too. Gender, race, throw it aside. It doesn't matter in Brampton.
Everyone's
if you move to Brampton, you just become a bad driver, unless you're me apparently. The one thing that I have this huge pet peeve now is that, okay, for anyone listening, if anyone's from Brampton, there are these lines on the road. They're often like dotted. You're supposed to drive between them. You're not supposed to like ride your wheel.
Oh, they're not like a train track.
No. Like so many people are just driving on the line. It's like, are you turning to the other lane? No, you're just a bad driver. It's like you try to get around them, but you get this like nervous, whatever. And there's lots of memes and like,
man,
Brampton had bad drivers. It's like well known, and it is true.
I didn't know that.
Dude, I commuted to Brampton for a summer. I've never seen more accidents. I've never seen or heard more accidents. Just like I'd be getting lunch. Accident. I'm like, oh, there's an accident. That's like you see intersections where the accidents always happen.
I literally drove by one recently, and there was like one of the light poles in the middle was just falling across the street.
Dude,
it's like,
there's so many pole damages.
How did you farm this? Like, you just drove into the pole. Like,
the pole damage you'd see too is just like there'll be like a street sign that's like cartoon bent into like the shape of a car. That's it. That's hit it.
It's true. It is true. But Brampton, I mean, honestly, it is close enough. Like a lot of people like kind of scoff my commute. I always remind them I'm going to work at weird times, so I don't really feel it. It's about an hour and a half there and back.
All
combined,
in?
Like
Combined?
Normally 55 minutes in, 35 back.
Yeah.
35 back is...
That's a breeze. That's why you get so many podcasts in.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
It's a treat, man.
It is.
It's a vacation.
It is. I mean, I discovered my love for podcasts when I talked about in the last episode a little bit. Was like when I was up at Wasaga Beach living for 18 months and I was a little lonely, 16 months or whatever, and I kind of was rediscovered podcasts, and that was kind of a way. But like, I always have them on. They're always on the background. Yep. Amelia hates it, I think. Well, talk to me, right? I agree with like I should be there when I'm there. That was. I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry.
You do it to yourself.
I do it to myself.
But I love it.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely love it. Never stop. Never change.
But yeah, no, the commute's not that bad. Brampton, aside from the driving, it like it doesn't have the nightlife, right? Like if you're
but you don't need it.
I don't need nightlife.
You never needed it. You were a transplant at Western nightlife. You know what I mean? You were like,
All you need is a video game.
I want to hear what is a
and a TV.
transplant at Western Nightlife.
like you
I don't disagree. I just want to hear the.
you were all like you know how like transplants like okay
Sometimes they're rejected.
yeah.
Bouncer's like, nope, not you.
Like you're there, they're working, the liver is working, or like the whatever's working.
Yeah.
But you can tell that it's been put there. It's been
It's funny
placed
you
there.
say that. I don't take it as insult at all. It's like there were so many times going out, and it was this fraternity mentality and like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
On like cocaine, figuratively.
Figuratively.
And it's like you go to the bar because everyone's going to the bar, and then it's like the spending money, and it's like I've already mentioned I'm cheap, but like I'm also like especially in university just didn't have the money.
Yeah.
So like sometimes you go out and it's like. Half the time you have a great time, sure, but then like half the time it's not even just like an okay time. It's like kind of a bad time. It's kind of like I didn't have a good night and I spent money. Fuck, you know what I mean?
No, because like the thing is you were in the fraternity, you were the president of the party fraternity.
not a big deal.
Of the party fraternity, which is wild.
How the
But
fuck?
because you know why?
For 2 terms.
Because you were the president has to do the most work. You found the least party job. You know what I mean? Like you found the
Sign
work.
me up.
You
Sign me
found the one where you had to network and do all this shit.
I hear you.
And the things that, like, don't get me wrong, love partying with you. We half the shit we do is partying. But what I liked about you wasn't your frat star, like, crush bitches energy, because that wasn't there. It was you were just self-deprecating. You were fucking.
Yeah.
You were just a good guy, a little nerdy. Like
I love
it's
it.
so it was like whenever you were in that scene, it always felt like a transplant because
Yeah.
you're always over there just like. This is fucking not me, like, like just making jokes, like no one's talking to me, or like, even though, like,
Does anyone have a dart?
yeah. So it was kind of like more like that, but
No offense taken.
no, I meant offense.
I take offense taken.
Yeah.
So how can I make sure Elliot isn't like that?
Yeah, we can. The thing is, you got to bring Elliot over to hang with the
Uncle.
cool kids. You
Hey,
know what I
Uncle
mean?
Rob, Uncle Trav, I love
yeah,
it.
and
yeah,
we'll
next
be like,
time you come on the podcast.
Question for you guys.
yeah,
Let's say, whatever, our lives go in different directions, or you guys end up having kids, and maybe our kids start spending time together. And maybe, we grew up, we're all happy, remember the good old days, whatever.
yeah.
How do you feel about another person's kid calling you uncle? If they were just calling, like, if Elliot grew up to call you Uncle Travis.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like if it was like thrust upon you that you would feel like an undue pressure that you're like, I don't want to be called uncle?
Oh, it depends how close we are.
Yeah, of course. If it was just like, hey, Elliot, this is Travis. Me and him used to go to school together. He's like, hi, Uncle Trav. Like, that would be kind of weird.
No. I'm like, you'll forget this. I forget everything before like 12.
My parents.
That might have been the concussions.
Okay.
I think that's quite common with really close, parents who are friends, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if we're hanging out all the time and it's like, yeah, I'll be like, okay.
I bring it up because like Amelia seems to have stumbled upon this algorithm where it's like if the kid was born like, so my good friends in Brampton, Ryan and his kids,
Shout out Ryan and his kids.
The ones who look at you as God.
Tara and Ryan, their kids, they don't call us uncle, but they
call you God.
They call me God. Well, they're very religious. So I should say.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
They
Patron saint.
they don't call us uncle, but like to me, it's like, oh, they were born before we were in their life. They can't call us uncle, but because Elliot was born and we were like friends,
Oh, okay.
now you can say uncle. And their next kid's gonna call us uncle. Well, they're gonna call me dad when they get married. Shit. But but like it's just a funny arbitrary way that she thought of saying. I just wanted to get your guys' opinions. So when Elliot comes over and starts dropping the U word, you guys are okay with it?
yeah, I'd say I have no problem with that. It's just like a cool little thing. He's gonna forget anyway. It's just like we're just closer than just the guy you see.
Yeah.
Remember me.
Love me.
Oh, Kev is an uncle.
I want to say the uncle title is pretty sweet. Like it's like there's no pressure. You're just an uncle. Cool
Huh?
uncle.
I love to hear it.
Do you?
But do
so-
your friends have kids though? Are you uncle to anyone that's not biological?
No, but I would love it. It'd be
I feel like
yeah.
that comes with a bit of age when you start becoming like the unofficial uncle.
Well, if my life goes as planned, I'm gonna have kids probably a little later.
Little later.
And I'm probably gonna be
40.
uncle to a lot of kids non-biologically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because, like,
You're famous.
my friend groups are, I'm famous. And they're like, oh, we want the famous uncle. No, I'm kidding. No, but I think it's cool. But it does transition. Rob, we'll get your answer because we have one last question for you from last episode about names like that. But Rob, like, I feel like you'd embrace that role.
Yeah, I would. And I think it's, I mean, me personally, I don't even use the word uncle for like even my biological aunts.
What?
And uncles. Like my aunts,
You don't call him Uncle Brian.
I wouldn't be
whatever.
like Uncle Mark, you know, like even if he was like my biological uncle.
Really?
Yeah, I just go by first names.
What?
So disrespectful.
So disrespectful.
Yeah. How do they still
Dude,
love
I
you?
have a hard time calling my
I have
actual
no
uncle not like Uncle Denny.
Really?
Yeah.
This-
I feel like I'm like, hey Dennis. I'm like, I'm an asshole. What the fuck was that?
I'm the complete opposite.
It's like Mr. and Mrs. It's like you gotta say it.
Yeah, I hear you. This is the last question. One of the questions that was posed last week.
Yeah.
Before we go.
Yeah. So sorry that we didn't really give you a good answer to your uncle question.
No, it's all right. Yeah,
But
you know
yeah,
what I was looking for.
we-
Just wanted to, gauge the room to see what the, forcing
I'm
someone
saying-
to be an uncle is.
Yeah, especially if we're famous at that
Could
point.
be worse. You could just not even call your biological uncle's
Yeah.
uncle. Like,
No, so we've been doing tips for your 20s for a while.
yes.
We've been having a hard time digesting our 20s down into tidbits. So we're like, okay, let's try a different thing where when we have guests on, we'll ask you to ask a question for
The next guest.
a next guest. If we know who they are, we'll tell you a little bit about them. If not, maybe just
A random
a
one.
And
random
also
one.
answer.
So you're
Um,
basically
the question.
farming off your work or like
Right.
pushing on other people.
I'm delegating.
yeah, delegating.
I'm a busy guy.
Fraternity president.
Right.
Nailed it.
President of the gang. So
Can you
our
just get out of the shot for a sec, Robbie?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Rob.
It's-
not a president? Okay.
I had a bunch of other important
Yeah.
roles.
Yeah, janitor. No, but just kidding. So we had our last guest on. We told him
Yes.
that you were a father, recent father, all this stuff. And it's along the same thing as uncle. But Rob's got the question here for you.
Question is, how does he, Mark, feel about girls calling their boyfriends in bed daddy?
I mean, I guess
As
that.
a father who is now daddy.
Well, it doesn't happen. I mean, okay, just to bring it back to like what the experience of being a father is now. Like I can imagine as Elliot goes, and he's not too far away. Like maybe 6 months from starting to like mama, dada, all that. That like
He just goes like, Mama, Daddy.
Daddy.
mama,
And
daddy.
he's got like a phone sex operator for.
This is the kind of stuff you can teach him, though. You
The
know?
thing is, I'm going to be talking to him about Amelia and say mommy all the time, and she'll be doing that about daddy. So it's kind of like, it would be weird because like, I'm daddy. Like, I don't want some.
But are you also? Have you ever been called Daddy?
No,
Okay.
no, me. Have you met me? I was at the back of the bar being like, why are we
Dude,
here?
you know
So I'm
the
like,
funny-
oh, daddy.
I've never been called Daddy either. I like maybe even kind of as a joke. Someone's like, we should dirty talk like Daddy, and I was like, never.
It's like, get out.
Get out. No, I'm just kidding. But like who even does that?
I don't know if it's. I think it might be just a myth, like an old.
So your kid's
wives'
gonna call you
tale.
dad?
Old daddy's tale. Someone when you guys were trailing off in the last episode, someone had mentioned another like variation of this question is like,
Yeah.
will he call me daddy?
Yeah, that's what.
And I was thinking, yeah, I have my own podcast. I'm allowed to rephrase your questions, Trav. I'm just kidding. I called my dad. My dad passed away, so I'm not going to bring this down. But like, I called him daddy way too long.
like how long?
Way
Did you also
too
breastfeed till you were
long.
8?
No, it was like 6.5, 6 and 3/4. Honestly, I can't nail it down. I'm going to say at least 14. I was still in high school calling him daddy, mommy and daddy. So the funny story here, it's real quick. I decided one day, no, it's no more. I'm changing. This is it. This is no more. I am going to course correct. And I overcorrected
You said his first name.
mother and father.
Oh.
And I still do it to, well, unfortunately, my dad passed away, but to my mother, she's
Yeah.
still mother.
Or
They
Pat.
didn't like it at first. They really didn't like it. But
They're
it,
like, do you hate us now? Like,
it
you
just,
going through
I
teen
don't know.
angst?
It kind of felt natural, though. I don't know.
Mom and dad.
Mother,
Mom
father.
and dad. There's a
Yeah.
middle ground. There was a middle
I
ground
had to make
there.
up for all the years.
The only step below mother and father in terms of like love is calling them by their first names,
that is
like
that'd be
Rob
all right.
does.
I don't do that to my mom and dad.
Only to their brothers and sisters.
It makes. I mean,
Yeah. Do you call Dave brother too?
no. That'd be good. Brother.
Brother.
Like, you gotta say it with like a little bit of like a posh.
That would make
like,
it more
yeah.
loving,
Mother.
I think, than just mother.
I don't know. It's
Hello, mother.
you know what though. It's like I do remember like between the age of maybe 12 and 15 being like, oh, I shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
to mommy. And then there would be situations.
But did
where,
you know it was sexualized yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
You didn't have sex till you were 35.
But at the same time, I just remember those awkward moments when I was like with my friends and I had to get my mom's attention.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, Mom, there was something. Like I just couldn't.
Why could you just say mom?
It just felt weird because she was never called mom. So is she going to know that I'm talking about her? How does she know?
So wait, did you drop mommy in front of your friends?
No, but I did like the classic when I was in grade 2. I called the teacher mommy once.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then, funny story is I had this one teacher in grade 7. Shout out Mr. McCabe. We joshed we joshed each other a lot. Like he was a good teacher. I get like a little bit of like
you called him daddy.
Here's the thing. He goes, he one day he goes, yes, son, as a joke. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you called me dad. Not just now. He's like, you called me dad like a few minutes ago. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I know you're fucking lying because I would have said daddy. You think I called you dad? You're lying. You must have misheard me. I didn't say that. In my head, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, bud. But at that time, I was just remember like I almost wanted to drop that right there. It's like, no.
I would have called you daddy. Oh my God. Okay.
I gotta get to work.
I know that question turned out to be hilarious. And we thank you for your
Oh,
time.
do you know the next guest? And do you want to
Yes.
come across?
Oh, yeah.
We do know the next guest.
Next guest is Ben Thompson.
Okay.
He's actually a younger member of the fraternity.
I think I actually met him once when I was doing like a training thing there. I could have been wrong.
Just to give you a little context, Ben is working on his acting career.
Oh, okay.
He just graduated maybe within the last year or two.
Yeah.
He's in the city and
Stud.
Absolute stud. He's going to be on the show.
So he doesn't
actually,
feel like a
in couple
transplant
days.
at a bar.
No.
The exact
He's
opposite.
the original liver. And it's working
He's
well.
transplanting himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any kids on the way? No.
No, he's still quite young.
Okay, so
he's maybe like 22,
a budding
23.
actor. I loved your experience with when you guys brought anyone with acting. It seems like they're perfect for guests. I might make a fraternity, like link it back to the fraternity a little bit, and just be like, was there anything in in your fraternity experience that you think will contribute to you being a better actor? Simple,
or like as a talent wise, or even career wise.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Twist my question.
Both. I'm asking.
I'm just kidding. No.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay, both.
Yeah. Just like was like not so much like was there a moment in the fraternity you thought that you're gonna be an actor, but it's like what like from being in this eclectic group of 50 dudes from different temperaments, talents, and convictions, blah blah blah. Like, do you think that has somehow made you a better actor?
All right. And it's
Write it down, Rami.
Okay, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Is this too much pressure to put on guests?
Not really. No.
No.
I think it would be like more pressure. Did you feel that the other last guests were pressured? It was
No, but there was fucking five of us.
I gotta
dude.
say, it was funny. Like Robbie's like ripping off my resume. He's like, his name's Mark Staniusz. He likes video games. He works in. It was just funny. Like the way you. It was like he likes video games. I think was the first thing that came in your mouth. It's like, no, I work at Sportsnet. I have a kid, but no, I like video games. Like games. Which, by the way, maybe I'll talk about this if I ever come on again. Is
We have to have
I'm
another
going
kid.
today.
I'm
Is
just kidding.
I'll bring the kid, but I was listening to the episode real quick, and you mentioned everything about doing anything on Twitch. And no, I'm still not, but somehow organically at work, it's really just kind of in its grassroots stage. So we'll see what it turns into, and it might just be a passion project that dies out. But I'm kind of working on a Sportsnet top 5 esports plays of the month. And it was kind of just like, oddly enough, there was a conversation at work, and I kind of like was pushing back and being like, not that esports are dumb, but like the barriers between esports and like real sports fans. And as someone who knows nothing about esports, I love video
That's
games.
weird that you don't, because I'm not even big into video games and I know esports.
But it's just like, I mean, I know.
I watch the influencers. I watch the Fortnite
yeah,
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know the games that are popular too, but like trying to bridge this gap between like what's video games and sports in a really interesting way, and I just wanted to bring that up. And
Dude, the
something to maybe
Fortnite
look at.
champion won like $1 million or something
2 million,
absurd.
2 million, yeah,
Or was it more?
it's 2.5
I thought it was
million.
like around 3.
Yeah.
yeah, it was like the whole prize pool was like 3.5 million, and then being like $500,000 to second place, 2.5 million to first place, and so on. But really cool experience, like looking for all that stuff. But I don't think it's too much pressure on your guests. Just to wrap it back, I don't
Okay.
think it's too much pressure. Maybe just make sure you have the guest lined up. If it was kind of like ambiguous, then it's
okay.
the same issue you run into with. I can't think of
Maybe
tidbits for your
then
20s.
maybe then we do a tips for your 20s. Like
Yeah.
maybe we're just trying
Mix
things.
it up.
We didn't even talk about all the podcast strategy we wanted to talk about.
Another day.
Another day, maybe we do that on yours.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll
Ooh.
bless you with that fire content.
Yeah, we'd
Oh,
love to
wow.
get back on your show as
Yes. Pod Drop. I actually came out with an episode recently. I skewed from the format a little bit. The original premise was big picture through the lens of video games, sports, and through, I called it Hollywood, TV or
TV movie,
movies or
yeah.
whatever. I skewed a little bit differently, and this time I did a drop of 3 sports ones, and I plan to do a drop of 3 video game ones. I might tweak it to like geek and include like Star Wars
Yeah,
and those
just like
things
nerd shit.
into
Yeah.
nerd shit, and then still have movies and television stand on its own, because I feel like video games is too niche, but like geek
Yeah.
culture is so much bigger. And the premise there was a lot about what I was talking about today, about Elliot, and thinking about I tell the story of bringing Elliot, a 4-month, at that time a 10-week-old, to the Raptors parade, which was insane and is
Yeah.
probably not a good parenting move.
Yeah.
Especially with the delays and how crazy it was. But that experience, I had William
But
Blau.
he was there.
He was there. He's not going to appreciate it.
No. But
He's going to forget everything before he was 12. But
Yeah.
William Lau, if anyone who's a Raptors fan probably heard him, he's a huge Raptors reporter for Yahoo Sports. He came on. We talked about the insane run. I talked to JD Bunkus from Sportsnet about some football, hard knock stuff. Point is, I thought of like doing 3 stories of sports and then dropping one later, 3 of that, and then kind of those all together will have this big picture of like immortalizing 2019 for my son.
we'll plug it.
I like that.
Pod Drop. I changed providers, but you would just be able to find it by searching Pod Drop. It helps. A lot of podcasts around the name Pod Drop. Throw Pod Drop and throw my name in. My name will be in the description, Mark Staniush. If you search that in Google or Spotify,
It'll come up.
It will come up.
And what's your Twitter?
Twitter is at Mark Staniush. Keep it
Okay.
simple.
And
You
if
got a name
you-
like that, no one's taking your
And you're
name.
not going to know how to spell it, so look at the description. If you're thinking about having a kid, if you're thinking about sports, video games, any of the things he mentioned, he is the guy. And dude, thanks for giving us that time. Like I was just joking before, but yeah, you're a busy fucking dude right now. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Love to catch up, guys.
Much appreciated. Good to
Awesome.
catch up, and we'll see you next.
Tuesday.
Loving is easy. You had me fucked up. It used to be so hard to see. Yeah, loving